Esther Madu sat at her worn kitchen table, the morning sun filtering through the lace curtains of her modest Maryland home. The air smelled of brewed coffee and the faint lavender of her dish soap. At 60, her dark skin bore the lines of a life hard-lived but fiercely loved. Her hands, calloused from years of sewing and gardening, scrolled through her old smartphone, a gift from her son, Darren, before their world unraveled. She wasn't one for gossip blogs, but her neighbor, Mrs. Clara, had mentioned a wedding announcement that Esther couldn't ignore. The blog loaded slowly, the screen flickering. Moretti Madu Wedding Extravaganza. Tech tycoon ties the knot in L.A. The headline hit her like a slap. Darren, her only son, was getting married. Not a call, not a letter. Nothing from him in 3 years, and now this. Her heart thudded, a mix of pride and betrayal. The article gushed about Sasha Moretti, a socialite with golden locks and a diamond-sharp smile, and Darren, the tech entrepreneur whose app had reshaped social media. There were photos, Darren in a tailored suit, Sasha draped in silk, their smiles polished for the cameras. Esther's name wasn't mentioned. Not once. She set the phone down, her hands trembling. The kitchen, once filled with Darren's laughter as he helped her knead dough, felt hollow. She stared at the fridge, where a faded photo of them at his high school graduation still hung, his arm around her, both beaming. "How could you not tell me, Darren?" she whispered, her voice breaking in the silence. The front door creaked, and Pastor Jim stepped in, his gray hair peeking from under a baseball cap. He'd been her friend since Darren was in diapers, always stopping by with a Bible verse or a bad joke. "Esther, you look like you've seen a ghost," he said, easing into a chair. She slid the phone toward him. "It's worse. My boy's getting married, Jim. Found out from strangers." He read the article, his brow furrowing. 3 years, and he doesn't call? That's not the Darren we raised. Esther's eyes stung. He's not the boy who left anymore. That blog says he's some big shot now. Too big for his mama. Jim leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "You carried that boy through storms, Esther. When his daddy walked out, when the bills piled up, you never broke. Don't let this break you now." She shook her head, wiping her eyes. "I just want to see him, Jim. Just want to know he's okay." "Then call him," Jim said, pushing the phone back. "Reach out. He's still your son." Esther stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over Darren's number. The thought of his voice, or worse, his silence, twisted her gut. But she pressed call, her heart pounding like it did when she'd first held him, tiny and screaming, in her arms. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Esther gripped it tighter, pacing the linoleum floor. Voicemail. Darren's voice, smooth and professional, said, "This is Darren Madu. Leave a message." No warmth, no trace of the boy who'd once prank-called her pretending to be a pizza delivery guy. She hung up, her breath shaky. "Try again," Jim urged, sipping the coffee she'd poured him. "He's busy, maybe." Busy for his mother? Esther snapped, then softened. "Sorry, Jim. I don't know who he is anymore." She texted instead, her fingers clumsy on the keys. "Darren, I saw the wedding news. I'm so proud. Please let me come. I just want to see you." She hit send, staring at the screen as if it could summon her son back to her. Minutes passed. The clock on the wall ticked louder. Jim tried to distract her with talk of the church picnic, but Esther's eyes stayed glued to the phone. Then, a ping. A single word. "Don't." Esther's breath caught. She showed Jim the screen, her voice barely a whisper. "He doesn't want me there." Jim's face hardened. "That's not right, Esther. Something's off. I've known that boy since he was stealing cookies from the church kitchen. He wouldn't do this." "Wouldn't he?" she said, sinking into her chair. "He left, Jim. Built his fancy life and forgot me. Maybe I'm just nothing to him now." Jim reached for her hand. "You listen to me, Esther Madu. You're the woman who worked double shifts to buy him that first computer. You're the one who prayed him through fevers and heartbreaks. You're his mother, And no fancy wedding or city lights can erase that. She nodded, but the word "don't" burned in her mind. She imagined Darren typing it, his face cold, maybe sitting in some glass office or beside Sasha, who probably didn't even know Esther existed. The thought stung deeper than she'd expected. "I need to know why," she said finally. "Why he's shutting me out. I can't just sit here and let him go." Jim sighed. "What are you planning, Esther? You're not thinking of going all the way to Los Angeles, are you?" Her eyes met his, steady and fierce. "If he won't come to me, I'll go to him." That night, Esther couldn't sleep. The house creaked with memories, every corner whispering of Darren. She climbed the attic stairs, her knees protesting, and pulled a dusty shoebox from a shelf. It was labeled Darren's Treasures in her careful handwriting. She hadn't opened it in years, afraid of the ache it would bring. She sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the single bulb overhead casting shadows. Inside the box were relics of a life she'd fought to give him: his first tooth, wrapped in tissue, a crayon drawing of them holding hands under a rainbow, a birthday card he'd made at 7, the words "Best Mom Ever" scrawled in red marker. She traced the letters, her fingers trembling. At the bottom was a photo from his 10th birthday. Darren, gap-toothed and grinning, held a soccer ball while Esther hugged him from behind, her smile wide despite the exhaustion in her eyes. They'd been a team then, just the two of them against the world. She'd worked nights at the diner, sewing dresses on weekends to afford his soccer camp. He'd promised to buy her a big house one day, with a pool and everything, Mama. "Where'd you go, baby?" she murmured, clutching the photo. The attic door creaked, and Mrs. Clara poked her head in, her curlers bobbing. "Esther, it's midnight. What are you doing up here?" Esther wiped her eyes, embarrassed. "Just remembering." Clara climbed up, settling beside her with a groan. "That boy of yours, huh? Saw the blog. All that glitz and glamour. Doesn't sound like our Darren." Esther handed her the photo. "This is my Darren. Not the one in those pictures with that woman." Clara studied it, then squeezed Esther's shoulder. "He's still in there, Esther. Boys grow up, they get lost sometimes. Doesn't mean they stop loving you." "Then why's he acting like I don't exist?" Esther's voice cracked. "I gave him everything, Clara. Every penny, every prayer. And now I'm not even invited to his wedding." Clara hesitated, then said, "Maybe it's not him. Maybe it's her, Sasha. You read that blog. She's got her claws in him, planning every detail. Sounds like she's running the show." Esther's jaw tightened. The blog had described Sasha as the mastermind behind the wedding of the century, with Darren as her perfect partner. The thought of someone controlling her son made her stomach churn. "I need to see him, Clara," she said. "I need to look in his eyes and know he's okay." Clara's eyes widened. "You're not seriously thinking of going to California? Esther, you've never even left Maryland." "Then it's time I do," Esther said, closing the shoebox. "He's my son. I'd walk through fire for him." The next morning, Esther stood in line at the post office, clutching a form for an expedited passport. She'd never needed one before. The farthest she'd traveled was Baltimore for a church retreat. The idea of flying across the country, alone, made her palms sweat, but the thought of missing Darren's wedding was worse. Pastor Jim had insisted on driving her, and now he leaned against the counter, muttering about the cost of plane tickets. "Esther, I'm begging you to think this through," he said. "You show up uninvited, and what? You think Darren's gonna run into your arms? What if he turns you away? Then at least I'll know," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "I'll know I tried." Jim sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're stubborn as a mule, you know that? Always have been." She managed a small smile. "Got me this far, didn't it?" The clerk called her forward, and Esther handed over the form. "How soon can I get this?" she asked. 3 days, with the rush fee," the clerk said, barely looking up. "You traveling for something special?" Esther hesitated, then said, "My son's wedding." The clerk's face softened. That's beautiful. He must be thrilled you're coming. Esther's smile faltered. Yeah, thrilled. Back in the car, Jim tried again. Esther, I'm not saying don't go. I'm saying be ready for what you find. Darren's not the kid who used to sneak into your bed during thunderstorms. He's a grown man, living a life you don't know. She stared out the window at the rolling Maryland fields. I know my boy, Jim. Even if he's forgotten me, I know him. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Jim shook his head but didn't argue. When they reached her house, she went straight to her laptop and booked a flight to Los Angeles, her hands shaking as she entered her credit card number. The ticket cost half her savings, but she didn't care. She printed the confirmation, her resolve hardening. I'm coming, Darren, she whispered, whether you want me or not. That evening, Esther sat at her kitchen table, the laptop open to the wedding website. The design was sleek, all gold and ivory, with a countdown to the Madu union. There was a guest list tab, and though part of her didn't want to look, she clicked it. Names scrolled by, celebrities, tech moguls, Sasha's family. She searched for Madu. Nothing. Not even a placeholder for Darren's mother. Her breath hitched. She scrolled again, desperate. Then she saw it. Bella Moretti, Sasha's Pomeranian, reserved seat. A dog had a place at her son's wedding, but she didn't. Esther slammed the laptop shut, tears spilling over. She grabbed her phone and called Clara, her voice shaking. Clara, you won't believe this. They've got a dog on the guest list, but not me. A dog. Clara gasped. That's downright cruel, Esther. Who does that Sasha think she is? Someone who doesn't want me there, Esther said, wiping her face. But I'm going anyway. I have to. Clara hesitated. Esther, be careful. This Sasha sounds like trouble. And Darren, maybe he's not himself right now. Esther's mind flashed to the blog photos, Darren's smile too perfect, his eyes distant. I know, she said softly. That's why I'm going. To bring him back. She hung up and opened the shoebox again, pulling out the birthday card. Best mom ever. She held it to her chest, closing her eyes. I'm still your mom, Darren, she said. And I'm coming for you. The next morning, her passport arrived. She packed a small suitcase, tucking the shoebox inside. As she locked her front door, Pastor Jim pulled up, his face grim but resigned. You sure about this, Esther? She nodded, her chin high. I've never been surer of anything. He drove her to the airport, the radio playing soft gospel. At the terminal, he hugged her tight. You call me if you need me, you hear? And Esther, whatever happens, you're enough. You've always been enough. She squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. Pray for me, Jim. Pray for my boy. As she walked through security, her heart pounded, but her steps were steady. Los Angeles was waiting, and so was the truth about her son. Esther Madu gripped the armrests of her window seat, her knuckles pale against her dark skin as the plane shuddered through a storm. The cabin lights flickered, and a crack of thunder rattled the windows. At 60, she'd never flown alone, and the turbulence felt like the sky itself was warning her to turn back. Her rosary, a worn string of beads from her mother, was clutched in her lap, its familiar weight grounding her. Outside, lightning illuminated the clouds, casting eerie shadows across the faces of sleeping passengers. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the storm, and saw Darren's face. Not the polished tech mogul from the wedding blog, but the boy who'd clung to her during a Maryland thunderstorm, his small voice whispering, "Mama, you're my hero." They'd sat under a blanket, her singing hymns until he fell asleep. That Darren had loved her fiercely, promising to never leave. Now his single-word text, "Don't," echoed in her mind, a wound that wouldn't close. First time flying? The voice came from the man beside her, a middle-aged businessman with kind eyes and a rumpled suit. He'd been reading a magazine, but now studied her tense posture. Esther managed a nod. First time for a lot of things. He chuckled softly. Storms like this, they're just the sky throwing a tantrum. We'll be fine. Where you headed? Los Angeles, she said, her voice tight. My son's wedding. His face lit up. That's wonderful. Bet he's thrilled to have his mom there. Esther's smile faltered. She turned to the window, watching rain streak across the glass. He doesn't know I'm coming. The man's brow furrowed, but he didn't press. Well, mothers and sons. They always find their way back. You'll see. She wanted to believe him, but the turbulence shook the plane again, and her stomach lurched. She clutched the rosary tighter, whispering a prayer. Lord, give me strength. Let me see my boy. The memory of Darren's childhood voice steadied her. You're my hero, Mama. She wasn't sure if she was still his hero, but she'd fight to find out. As the plane descended into LAX, the storm eased, leaving a misty glow over the city. Esther's heart raced, not from the flight, but from what lay ahead. She was 3,000 miles from home, chasing a son who didn't want her. But she'd come too far to turn back now. The vineyard estate loomed like a fortress, its wrought iron gates gleaming under the California sun. Grapevines stretched across rolling hills, and the air smelled of lavender and wealth. Esther stood at the entrance, her suitcase at her feet, her simple cotton dress stark against the luxury around her. The wedding venue was everything the blog had promised: opulent, exclusive, untouchable. A security guard, broad-shouldered and stone-faced, blocked her path. Name? He demanded, scanning a tablet. Esther Madu, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I'm the groom's mother. He scrolled, his frown deepening. You're not on the list. Her heart sank, but she squared her shoulders. There's been a mistake. My son is Darren Madu. I've come all the way from Maryland. Please, just check again. The guard's eyes narrowed. No Madu family listed, ma'am. Step aside or I'll have to escort you off the property. Escort me. Esther's voice rose, drawing stares from a group of arriving guests in designer suits. I'm his mother. I have a right to be here. A second guard appeared, younger, with a kinder face but the same firm tone. Ma'am, please. We have strict instructions. If you're not on the list, you can't enter. Esther's eyes burned with tears, but she refused to cry. She stepped closer, her voice low and fierce. You listen to me. I raised that boy alone. I worked my fingers to the bone so he could have this life. You think a gate's gonna stop me from seeing him on his wedding day? The younger guard hesitated, glancing at his partner, but the older one grabbed her arm. That's enough. Move, or we call the police. Let her go. A voice cut through the tension. Esther turned to see a woman in a catering uniform, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes sharp with urgency. She marched over, waving off the guards. I know her. She's with me. The older guard scowled. She's not on the list, Maria. Maria shot him a look. She's helping with setup. My mistake. Forgot to add her. Come on, Esther, let's go. Esther blinked, confused but grateful, and grabbed her suitcase. The guards muttered but stepped back. Maria led her down a side path, away from the main entrance, her pace brisk. Once out of earshot, she whispered, You're really his mom, aren't you? Esther nodded, her throat tight. How'd you know? Maria's eyes softened. I heard you. That kind of love. It's not something you fake. But you need to be careful. This wedding's got secrets. Esther's pulse quickened. What kind of secrets? Maria glanced over her shoulder. Not here. Just watch yourself. She pointed to a service entrance. Go through there. Someone's waiting for you. The gardener's entrance was a narrow gate hidden behind a row of olive trees. Esther slipped through, her suitcase bumping against the gravel. The vineyard's grandeur faded here, replaced by stacks of crates and the hum of kitchen noise. She felt out of place, a stranger in her son's world, but the thought of seeing Darren kept her moving. A figure stepped from the shadows, and Esther's breath caught. It was Ao, Darren's childhood best friend, now a lean man in his 30s with a shaved head and a nervous smile. He wore a tailored suit, but his eyes held the same mischief she remembered from their Maryland summers. "Mrs. Madu," he said, his voice warm but strained. "You made it. Ayo." Esther pulled him into a hug, her heart lifting. "Thank God you're here. What's going on? Why am I sneaking in like a thief?" He glanced around, his smile fading. "It's complicated. Come on, let's get you inside." He led her to a storage shed, its door creaking as he ushered her in. The air smelled of soil and wax. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting shadows on crates of wine bottles. Ao shut the door, his face serious now. "You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Madu," he said, his voice low. "But you deserve to see this. You deserve the truth." Esther's chest tightened. "The truth about what?" "Ao, where's my son? Why's he shutting me out?" Ao hesitated, his eyes darting to the door. "It's not that simple. Darren, he's not himself. Hasn't been for a while." "What does that mean?" Esther's voice shook. "Ao, you've known him since you were kids. If something's wrong, tell me." He ran a hand over his head, conflicted. "I want to, but it's not safe. Not yet. Just stay hidden and watch. You'll see what I mean." Esther grabbed his arm, her grip firm. "I didn't fly across the country to play games, Ao. If my boy's in trouble, I need to know. Now." Ao's eyes softened, but something dark lingered in them, a secret he wasn't ready to share. "I'm trying to protect you both. Trust me, Mrs. Madu. Follow me, and keep quiet." He cracked the door open, checking the path, then led her toward the main venue. Esther's heart pounded, her mind racing with questions. Ao's cryptic words only deepened the dread she'd carried since that single-word text. Whatever was happening, she was closer to Darren than she'd been in years, and closer to a truth she wasn't sure she could face. Ao guided Esther to a balcony overlooking the vineyard's outdoor pavilion, where the wedding rehearsal was in full swing. White roses draped the arches, and a string quartet played softly. Guests mingled, their laughter floating up like champagne bubbles. Esther's eyes scanned the crowd, desperate for her son. "There," Ao whispered, pointing to a man in a navy suit standing near the altar. "That's Darren." Esther's breath caught. It was him, her Darren, taller and broader than she remembered, his dark skin glowing under the sunlight. His hair was cropped short, his posture confident, but something was wrong. His movements were stiff, his smile too practiced, like an actor playing a role. He stood beside Sasha, who sparkled in a cream dress, her hand possessive on his arm. Darren's gaze swept the crowd, but it was cold, lifeless, nothing like the warm eyes that once lit up when he saw her. "That's not my boy," Esther whispered, her voice breaking. "It looks like him, but it's not." Ao's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his silence louder than words. Esther gripped the balcony railing, her knees weak. She wanted to run to him, to shake him, to demand answers, but Ao's hand on her shoulder held her back. "Wait," he said. "Just watch." Sasha leaned into Darren, whispering something that made him nod mechanically. Esther's stomach churned. She remembered Darren's teenage years, how he'd argue with her over curfews, his eyes full of fire. This man had no fire, no spark. It was as if someone had hollowed him out. "Ao, what's happened to him?" she asked, tears spilling over. "Is he sick? Drugged? Tell me." Ao's face was a mask of guilt. "I can't, not yet. But you're right to be here. You're the only one who can fix this." Before Esther could press further, a server approached them, a young woman with a tray of champagne flutes. She glanced at Esther, then Ao, her expression curious. "You two okay up here?" she asked. "We're fine," Ao said quickly, steering Esther away. But as they moved, the server slipped something into Esther's hand, a folded napkin. Esther glanced at her, but the woman was already gone, blending into the crowd. Back in the storage shed, Esther unfolded the napkin with trembling hands. Scrawled in black ink were the words, "Be careful. You weren't supposed to be here." They lied to him. Her pulse raced, the cryptic message amplifying her fear. She showed it to Ao, whose face paled. "Who wrote this?" she demanded. "And what does it mean, they lied to him?" Ao shook his head, his voice tight. "I don't know, Mrs. Madu. But you need to stay out of sight. If Sasha or her people see you—" "Sasha?" Esther's eyes narrowed. "What's she got to do with this? Ao, you're hiding something. I can see it in your face." He paced the small shed, his hands clenched. "I'm trying to help, okay? But this is bigger than you realize. Darren's caught in something complicated. Sasha's not who she seems." Esther stepped closer, her voice fierce. "Then tell me who she is. Tell me why my son looks like a stranger. I'm not leaving until I know." Ao stopped, his shoulders slumping. "I promised Darren I'd keep you safe. If I tell you everything, it could ruin him. Just trust me a little longer." "Trust you?" Esther's voice cracked. "My boy's out there, looking like a ghost, and you're talking in riddles. I trusted you when you were kids, Ao, but this is my son's life." Ao's eyes met hers, filled with pain. "I know. And I swear I'm on your side. But you have to play this smart. Stay hidden. Watch the rehearsal dinner tonight. You'll see things that'll make this clearer." Esther clutched the napkin, her mind spinning. The note, Ao's secrecy, Darren's lifeless eyes. It was all connected, a puzzle she was desperate to solve. She thought of the rosary in her pocket, the prayers she'd whispered on the plane. She'd come to find her son, and no gate, no note, no secret would stop her. "Fine," she said finally, her voice steel. "I'll watch. But Ao, if you're lying to me, if you're part of whatever's hurting my boy, you'll answer to me." Ao nodded, relief and fear mixing in his eyes. "I wouldn't expect anything less, Mrs. Madu." As they slipped out of the shed, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the vineyard. Esther's heart pounded with a mix of dread and determination. The truth was close, hidden in the glitz of this wedding, and she'd tear it apart to save her son. Esther Madu crouched behind a trellis draped with roses, her heart pounding as she watched the man she was told was her son. The vineyard's pavilion glowed under chandeliers, the rehearsal dinner in full swing. Guests in glittering attire clinked glasses, their laughter a stark contrast to the turmoil in Esther's chest. The man, Darren, or so Ao had said, stood at the center, his navy suit impeccable, his smile a polished mask. But up close, in the flickering light, Esther's doubt grew. His face was Darren's, down to the faint scar on his jaw from a childhood fall, but his eyes were wrong. They were flat, unfamiliar, lacking the warmth that had once defined her boy. She clutched the napkin with the cryptic warning, "Be careful. You weren't supposed to be here." They lied to him, its words burning in her mind. Ao had slipped away to blend into the crowd, leaving her hidden with strict instructions to stay out of sight. But Esther couldn't tear her eyes from the man at the altar. He moved like Darren, laughed like Darren, yet every gesture felt rehearsed, as if he were playing a part in a play she didn't understand. A guest bumped into her hiding spot, nearly toppling a vase. Esther froze, her breath shallow, but the woman didn't notice, too absorbed in her champagne. Esther's mind raced. Was she losing it? Had 3 years apart warped her memory of her son? She thought of the shoebox back home, filled with Darren's childhood treasures, his drawings, his first tooth, the birthday card proclaiming her best mom ever. That Darren was real. This one felt like a ghost. A server passed by, the same young woman who'd given her the note. Their eyes met briefly, and the server's expression flickered with urgency before she moved on. Esther's grip tightened on the trellis. She needed answers, not more riddles. She whispered a prayer, her rosary beads pressed against her palm. "Lord, show me the truth. Let me know my boy." As the man toasted with Sasha, his voice carried, a smooth baritone, just like Darren's. But the way he tilted his head, the stiffness in his shoulders, it wasn't right. Esther's heart screamed that this wasn't her son, But her mind clung to the possibility that she was wrong. She had to get closer, to see his eyes up close, to know for sure. Esther slipped through the crowd, her simple dress a shadow among the sequins and silk. She kept her head low, weaving between guests until she reached a marble fountain near the pavilion's edge. The man she was watching stood just yards away, Sasha's arm looped through his. Esther's breath hitched as Sasha's gaze suddenly locked onto her, sharp and predatory, like a hawk spotting prey. Sasha excused herself from the group, her cream dress shimmering as she strode toward Esther. Up close, she was even more striking, golden hair cascading over her shoulders, eyes a piercing blue. But there was no warmth in her expression, only calculation. Esther straightened, refusing to cower, though her heart pounded. "You're Esther, aren't you?" Sasha's voice was smooth, but it carried an edge. "Darren's mother." Esther nodded, her throat tight. "And you're Sasha." "I came to see my son." Sasha's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You shouldn't have. Darren made it clear he didn't want you here." The words cut deeper than Esther expected, but she held her ground. "He's my son. I have a right to be at his wedding." Sasha stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. "You lost that right years ago. Darren's moved on. He's built a life you can't even comprehend. You're an embarrassment to him, a reminder of a past he's outgrown." Esther's hands clenched, her nails digging into her palms. "You don't know him like I do. You don't know what we've been through." Sasha laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "Oh, I know him better than you ever will. He's mine now, Esther. And if you care about him at all, you'll leave before you ruin everything." "Ruin what?" Esther's voice rose, drawing a few curious glances. "What are you so afraid of me seeing?" Sasha's eyes narrowed, but she recovered quickly, her smile returning. "Nothing. But if you stay, you'll humiliate him. Is that what you want? To drag him back to your little world of struggle and sacrifice?" Esther's vision blurred with tears, but she refused to break. "I want my son to be happy. If he's happy with you, I'll go. But I need to hear it from him." Sasha's face hardened. "You won't. Leave now, or I'll have security drag you out. And trust me, I'll make sure Darren knows exactly how you disrespected his wishes." Before Esther could respond, Sasha turned on her heel, gliding back to the man at the altar. Esther's chest heaved, her mind reeling. Sasha's words were venom, but they only fueled her resolve. If Sasha was this desperate to keep her away, there was something to hide, and Esther would find it. Esther retreated to a quieter corner of the venue, her heart still racing from Sasha's confrontation. Near the pavilion's entrance, a table displayed a collage of photos, a timeline of Darren and Sasha's love story. The display was elegant, with gold frames and handwritten captions. Esther approached, hoping to find a piece of her son in the images, something to anchor her fading hope. She scanned the photos, her breath catching at images of Darren, or the man she was told was Darren, laughing on a yacht, dancing at a gala, proposing to Sasha on a cliffside. But as she looked closer, a chill ran through her. Every photo that should have included her had been altered. A picture from Darren's college graduation, where she'd stood proudly beside him, now showed only him, her figure cropped out. A childhood snapshot of them at a Maryland fair, her arm around his shoulders, had been replaced with an image of him alone, the background blurred. Esther's hands trembled as she touched a frame. "What have they done to you, Darren?" she whispered. The erasure felt personal, a deliberate attempt to wipe her from his life. She searched for any trace of their past, a birthday, a Christmas, anything, but there was nothing. Even a photo from Darren's high school soccer championship, where she'd cheered louder than anyone, now showed Sasha's mother in the stands, smiling as if she'd been there. A guest, an older woman in a pearl necklace, noticed Esther's distress. "Lovely couple, aren't they?" she said, gesturing to the photos. "Such a perfect story." Esther forced a smile, her voice tight. "These pictures, they're not all real, are they?" The woman frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "They're beautiful." Esther pointed to the soccer photo. "That's not right. I was there, not her." I'm his mother. The woman's eyes widened, and she stepped back, clearly uncomfortable. Oh, I'm sure it's just a mistake. Excuse me. She hurried away, leaving Esther alone with the doctored images. Esther's mind spun. Why go to such lengths to erase her? Was it Sasha's doing, or something bigger? The napkin's warning echoed. They lied to him. She needed to find Ao, to demand the truth, but the crowd was thickening, and she couldn't risk being seen again. The rehearsal dinner moved to a grand dining hall, its long table set with crystal and silver. Esther slipped in through a service door, guided by the server who'd given her the note. The woman, Maria, had whispered, "Stay in the shadows," before vanishing into the kitchen. Esther pressed herself against a wall, hidden behind a velvet curtain, as the guests took their seats. The man at the head of the table rose, glass in hand, and the room quieted. "I want to make a toast," he said, his voice smooth but oddly detached. "To the one who raised me right, who taught me what it means to be a man." Esther's heart lifted, a flicker of hope igniting. Maybe he was about to say her name, to acknowledge her after all. But then he turned to Sasha's mother, a poised woman in a sapphire gown, and said, "To Mrs. Moretti, my rock and my guide. Thank you for everything." The room erupted in applause, but Esther's world tilted. She gripped the curtain, her knees buckling. Mrs. Moretti? The woman who'd never changed Darren's diapers, never stayed up praying through his fevers, never sacrificed her own dreams for his? Esther's tears fell silently, her heart shattering. She wanted to scream, to storm the table and demand the truth, but Maria's warning kept her rooted. Ao appeared at her side, his face grim. "Mrs. Madu, you okay?" "Okay," she hissed, her voice shaking. He just thanked that woman for raising him. "Ao, what's happening to my boy?" Ao's eyes darted to the crowd, his voice low. "I told you, he's not himself. You saw the photos, didn't you? They're rewriting his life." "Who's they?" Esther grabbed his arm, her nails digging in. "Ao, I'm done with your secrets. Tell me what's going on, or I swear I'll walk out there and make a scene." Ao's face twisted with guilt. "I want to, but it's not safe. Not here. Just wait a little longer. You'll see." Esther's voice broke. "See what?" "My son's gone, Ao. That man out there, he's not Darren. And you know it." Ao looked away, his silence a confession. Esther's despair hardened into resolve. She wasn't leaving until she uncovered the truth, no matter the cost. As the dinner continued, Esther stayed hidden, her eyes fixed on the man at the table. He laughed at the right moments, nodded at Sasha's prompts, but his movements were mechanical, like a puppet on strings. Esther's doubt solidified into certainty. This wasn't her son. But if he wasn't Darren, where was her boy? And why was this charade happening? A commotion at the table drew her attention. The man stood, adjusting his tux, and a small envelope slipped from his pocket, landing under his chair. No one noticed, too caught up in the toasts and chatter. Esther's pulse quickened. It was a chance, maybe her only one, to find a clue. She waited until a server passed, blocking the view, then darted forward, her heart in her throat. She snatched the envelope and retreated to the shadows, her hands trembling as she opened it. Inside was a folded document, its edges worn. She scanned the text. Psychiatric discharge summary. Patient: Darren Madu. Diagnosis: severe dissociative episode. Treatment: ongoing medication and observation. Esther's breath stopped. Darren, her vibrant, brilliant son, had been in a psychiatric facility? When? Why hadn't she known? The document listed a facility in California, with a discharge date just months ago. Her mind raced, piecing together Ao's warnings, the altered photos, Sasha's threats. Was this why Darren had cut her off? Had he been too ill to reach out? Maria reappeared, her eyes wide. "What's that?" she whispered, glancing at the paper. Esther showed her, her voice barely audible. "It's about my son. He's been sick, Maria. And no one told me." Maria's face darkened. That's why you got that note. Someone here knows what's going on. You need to be careful, Esther. If they find out you have this. Who's they? Esther pressed, her voice urgent. Maria, you know something. Help me. Maria hesitated, then leaned closer. I've heard things, whispers in the kitchen. Sasha's got people watching him, controlling him. That man out there? He's part of it. But I don't know the whole story. Esther's mind spun. Controlling him. Was Darren still out there, trapped somewhere, while this impostor took his place? She tucked the document into her pocket, her resolve steeling. I'm going to find my son, Maria. And no one's going to stop me. Maria nodded, her eyes fierce. I'll help you, but you have to move fast. The wedding's tomorrow, and after that. She trailed off, fear flickering in her gaze. Esther squeezed her hand. Thank you. Pray for me, Maria. As the dinner wound down, Esther slipped back into the shadows, the document a burning weight against her chest. The truth was closer, but so was the danger. She'd come to see her son's wedding, but now she was fighting for his life. Esther Madu sat in the cramped storage shed at the Vineyard estate, the air thick with the scent of wax and earth. The psychiatric discharge summary she'd found trembled in her hands, its words, severe dissociative episode, searing her heart. Her son, Darren, had been ill, hidden away, while a stranger wore his face at his own wedding. The revelation from Ao, Darren's childhood friend, had shattered her world. He stood before her now, his eyes heavy with guilt, as the truth spilled out. The man out there isn't Darren, Ao said, his voice low, barely above the hum of the distant rehearsal dinner. It's Devon, his cousin. Sasha's been using him to play Darren's part. Esther's breath caught, her mind reeling. Devon, the cousin who'd always lingered on the edges of their family, envious of Darren's success. She remembered his sly grin at family reunions, the way he'd mimic Darren's mannerisms to charm others. But this... Why? She whispered, her voice cracking. Why would Devon do this? And where's my son? Ao glanced at the shed's door, ensuring they were alone. 3 years ago, Darren had a breakdown. The pressure of his tech empire, the investors, the fame, it broke him. He was admitted to a facility, and Sasha, she saw an opportunity. Esther's hands clenched, the document crumpling. An opportunity to steal his life? Ao nodded, his face grim. She convinced everyone Darren was fine, just taking a break. Devon was already close to the family, and with some coaching, he could pass as Darren in public. They've been fooling everyone, investors, the media, even me for a while. Esther's tears fell, hot and silent. And Darren? Where is he, Ao? Tell me now. He's at a recovery center, about an hour from here, Ao said. Sasha's got him under lock and key, sedated, out of the way. But he's alive, Mrs. Madu. I've seen him. Alive. The word was a lifeline, pulling Esther from despair. She stood, her resolve hardening despite the ache in her chest. Take me to him. I need to see my boy. Ao hesitated, his eyes conflicted. It's dangerous. Sasha's people are watching the facility. If they catch you... I don't care, Esther snapped, her voice fierce. I've crossed a country for him, Ao. I'll face whatever's waiting. You owe me this. Ao's shoulders slumped, guilt etching his face. I should have told you sooner. I thought I was protecting him, but... You're right. Let's go. I've got a car nearby. Esther tucked the document into her pocket, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. She'd come to Los Angeles for a wedding, but now she was on a mission to reclaim her son. As they slipped out of the shed, the vineyard's lights twinkled like stars, mocking the darkness closing in. The drive to the recovery center was a blur of winding roads and neon signs, the California night heavy with secrets. Esther sat in the passenger seat of Ao's borrowed sedan, her rosary beads clicking as she prayed silently. The city gave way to desolate hills, and the facility emerged, a squat, gray building surrounded by a chain-link fence, its windows dark except for a faint glow. It looked more like a prison than a place of healing. A.O. parked in a shadowed lot, cutting the engine. "This is it," he said, his voice tense. "Darren's in there, but we have to be careful. Sasha's got private security, and they report to her." Esther's stomach churned, but she nodded. "How do we get in?" "There's a side entrance for staff," A.O. said, pulling a stolen keycard from his pocket. "I got this from a contact inside. But if we're caught, there's no talking our way out." Esther met his gaze, her eyes steady. "Then we won't get caught." They slipped out of the car, moving like ghosts through the shadows. The fence loomed, its metal glinting under a flickering streetlight. A.O. swiped the keycard at a gate, and it buzzed open, the sound jarring in the silence. Esther's heart raced as they crossed the grounds, dodging security cameras. The side entrance was a plain door, its paint peeling. A.O. swiped again, and they were inside. The hallway was sterile, smelling of antiseptic and despair. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows. Esther's shoes squeaked on the linoleum, each step echoing her fear. A.O. led her to a locked ward, his hands shaking as he used the keycard once more. Inside, the air was heavy, the silence broken only by distant murmurs. A nurse at a desk looked up, startled. "Who are you?" she demanded, rising. A.O. stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "We're here to see Darren Madu. Family visit." The nurse's eyes narrowed. "No visitors without approval. You need to leave." Esther's patience snapped. She pushed past A.O., her voice trembling with urgency. "I'm his mother. I haven't seen my son in 3 years. Please, just let me see him." The nurse hesitated, her expression softening. I could lose my job. But, room 12, end of the hall. 5 minutes, that's all you get." Esther's tears welled, gratitude mixing with dread. "Thank you." They hurried to room 12, the door heavy and cold. A.O. stayed back, keeping watch, as Esther pushed it open. Inside, a frail figure lay in a narrow bed, his face half hidden by shadows. Darren, her son. Esther's breath caught as she approached the bed, her eyes locked on Darren. He was thinner than she remembered, his once vibrant frame gaunt, his dark skin ashen. And dripped into his arm, and his eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. The sight broke her heart, but it was him, her son, not the impostor at the vineyard. She sank to her knees beside him, her hand trembling as she touched his cheek. "Darren," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "It's Mama. I'm here." His eyelids fluttered, but he didn't wake. Esther's gaze fell to a chart at the bedside, listing medications with names she couldn't pronounce. The psychiatric discharge summary had mentioned sedation, but this felt like more, like he was being kept under, deliberately silenced. A.O. stepped inside, his voice low. "They've been drugging him, Mrs. Madu." Sasha forged power of attorney after his breakdown. She transferred his company shares, his inheritance, everything, into her name. Devon's been signing contracts as Darren, keeping the business running while Sasha pulls the strings. Esther's blood ran cold. "She stole his life," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "And Devon just went along with it?" A.O. nodded, his eyes dark. Devon's always wanted what Darren had. Sasha offered him a cut, plus the spotlight. He didn't hesitate. Esther looked at Darren, her heart aching. How could they do this to him? My boy built that company from nothing. And now he's like this. She leaned closer, stroking his hair, the way she had when he was a child with a fever. "I'm so sorry, baby. I should have known. I should have come sooner." A noise in the hallway made A.O. tense. "We need to move. If security checks this ward, we're done." Esther's eyes burned with tears, but she refused to leave without trying. "Darren, please," she said, her voice firmer. "Wake up. It's Mama. I need you to hear me." His fingers twitched, a small sign of life. Esther's hope flared, but time was slipping away. She needed him to know she was there, to fight for him as she always had. She began to hum a lullaby, the one she'd sung when he was small, its melody soft and familiar. The lullaby filled the small room, its notes weaving through the antiseptic air. Esther's voice was steady despite her tears, each word a prayer. "Hush now, my baby, the stars are above." She'd sung it through countless nights, from colic to nightmares, binding them together. Now, she poured her heart into it, willing Darren to hear her. His eyes fluttered again, and this time, they opened, hazy, unfocused, but unmistakably his. "Mama!" he croaked, his voice weak, barely a whisper. Esther's sob broke free, her hands cupping his face. "Yes, baby, it's me. I'm here. I found you." Darren's gaze cleared slightly, confusion giving way to recognition. "You came," he said, tears welling in his eyes. I dreamed you." She kissed his forehead, her tears mixing with his. "No dream, Darren. I'm real, and I'm not leaving you." Ao hissed from the doorway. "Mrs. Madu, we have to go. Now." But Esther ignored him, her focus on her son. "Darren, what happened? Why didn't you call me?" His brow furrowed, pain etching his face. "I broke down. Couldn't think straight. Sasha said she'd handle everything. Then, they kept me here. Said I was a danger." His voice cracked. "I didn't know, Mama. I didn't know they'd take it all." Esther's heart shattered, but her rage burned hotter. Sasha hadn't just stolen his wealth, she'd stolen his freedom, his identity, his will. "You're not a danger," she said fiercely. "You're my son, and you're stronger than they know. We're getting you out." Darren's hand gripped hers, weak but determined. "Mama, I knew you'd come. I heard you in my dreams." Ao's voice grew urgent. "Security's coming. I hear footsteps." Esther turned to him, her eyes blazing. "We're not leaving him, Ao. Help me." Ao hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but we need a plan. He's not strong enough to walk far." Esther looked at Darren, her mind racing. "Can you stand, baby? Just a little." He nodded, his jaw set despite the pain. With Ao's help, they eased him up, his legs shaky. Esther draped his arm over her shoulder, her strength fueled by love. "Lean on me," she said. "Like always." As they moved toward the door, a guard's voice echoed down the hall, sharp and commanding. Esther's pulse spiked, but she held Darren tighter, the lullaby still echoing in her heart. She'd found her son, and no one would take him from her again. Esther Madu's heart pounded as she supported her son, Darren, his frail frame leaning heavily against her. The sterile hallway of the recovery center buzzed with danger, the distant sound of security guards' boots growing closer. Ao, Darren's childhood friend, led the way, his stolen keycard trembling in his hand. The air smelled of antiseptic, but to Esther it reeked of betrayal. Sasha's betrayal, Devon's betrayal, the world's betrayal of her son. "Move, Mrs. Madu," Ao whispered, his voice tight. "They're almost here." Darren's breathing was ragged, his steps unsteady, but his grip on Esther's arm was fierce. "Mama, don't let go," he murmured, his voice a ghost of the vibrant boy she'd raised. "Never," Esther said, her voice steel despite the tears in her eyes. She'd found him, sedated and hidden in this prison masquerading as a hospital, and no one would take him from her again. Ao swiped the keycard at a side exit, but the lock buzzed red. "Damn it," he hissed, trying again. "It's jammed." Esther's pulse spiked. The guards' voices were clearer now, barking orders. She glanced at Darren, his eyes hazy but determined. "Ao, we need another way," she said, her voice low but commanding. Ao's eyes darted around, landing on a janitor's closet. "In here," he said, pushing the door open. They slipped inside, the cramped space smelling of bleach and damp mops. Esther eased Darren onto a stool, her hand steadying him as Ao barricaded the door with a bucket. "Pastor Jim's on his way," Ao said, checking his phone. "He's got a car ready, but we need to get to the back lot." Esther's heart lifted at the mention of her old friend. She'd called him from the vineyard, desperate, and he'd flown to Los Angeles without hesitation. "How far?" she asked. 5 minutes, if we can get past security, Ao said, his face grim. "But Darren's not fast, and they've got cameras." Darren coughed, his voice weak but resolute. "I can do it, Ao. For Mama." Esther squeezed his hand, her rosary beads pressed between their palms. "You're strong, baby. You always have been." Ao cracked the door, peering out. "Clear, but not for long. Stay close." They moved, Esther and Ao flanking Darren, their steps muffled on the linoleum. The hallway was a maze, but Ao navigated with grim determination. As they neared an exit, a guard rounded the corner, his flashlight sweeping the walls. "Stop!" he shouted, reaching for his radio. Esther's heart stopped, but Ao acted fast, shoving a mop cart into the guard's path. The man stumbled, cursing, and Ao grabbed Esther's arm. "Run!" They burst through the exit into the cool night air, the chain-link fence looming ahead. Pastor Jim's car idled beyond it, a beacon in the darkness. Ao swiped the keycard at the gate, and it opened with a groan. They stumbled through, Darren's legs buckling, but Esther held him up, her strength fueled by love. Jim leapt from the car, his gray hair wild, his eyes wide with relief. "Esther! Thank God! Help me get him in," she said, her voice urgent. They eased Darren into the back seat, Esther climbing in beside him. Ao took the front, and Jim floored the gas, the tires screeching as alarms blared behind them. As they sped into the night, Esther held Darren close, his head resting on her shoulder. "You're safe now, baby," she whispered, her tears falling. But the wedding was tomorrow, and Sasha's plan was still in motion. The fight wasn't over. Back at the vineyard estate, the morning sun bathed the pavilion in gold, the wedding in full swing. Guests in designer gowns and tuxedos filled the rows, their murmurs blending with the string quartet's melody. Sasha Moretti stood at the altar, radiant in a white gown that shimmered like moonlight, her smile a perfect mask. Beside her was Devon, the impostor, dressed as Darren, his posture stiff but convincing to those who didn't know the truth. Cameras flashed, live-streaming the wedding of the century to millions. Sasha's eyes scanned the crowd, her confidence unshaken. She'd orchestrated every detail, Darren's confinement, Devon's training, the forged documents. The real Darren was out of the way, and Esther, she assumed, had been scared off. Her empire, built on Darren's tech fortune, was secure. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant began, his voice booming, "we are gathered to unite Sasha Moretti and Darren Madu in marriage." Devon's smile twitched, his eyes darting to Sasha. He'd played his role well, but the weight of the lie was heavy. Sasha squeezed his hand, a silent warning, and he nodded, turning to face the crowd. In the shadows, Maria, the server who'd helped Esther, watched from the catering tent, her heart racing. She'd heard from Ao that Esther had found Darren, but the plan was still unfolding. Maria clutched a phone, ready to signal if needed, her loyalty to Esther outweighing her fear of Sasha's wrath. "Do you, Darren Madu, take Sasha Moretti to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the officiant asked. Devon opened his mouth, but a commotion at the back of the pavilion stopped him. Heads turned, gasps rippling through the crowd. Sasha's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing as she saw the impossible. Esther, arm in arm with the real Darren, striding down the aisle. Esther walked with purpose, her simple dress a stark contrast to the opulence around her. Darren leaned on her, his steps slow but steady, his face pale but resolute. Pastor Jim and Ao flanked them, their presence a shield against the stunned stares. The crowd parted, whispers erupting like wildfire. Cameras swiveled, capturing every moment. Sasha's face drained of color, her hands trembling as she gripped Devon's arm. "What is this?" she hissed, her voice barely audible. Devon froze, his eyes wide with panic. I don't know," he stammered, his facade crumbling. Esther stopped at the altar, her gaze locked on Sasha. "This is my son," she said, her voice ringing clear. "The real Darren Madu. And this wedding is a lie." The crowd erupted, guests murmuring, phones recording. The officiant blinked, confused, as Sasha stepped forward, her voice sharp. "This is absurd. Security, remove them." But Ao raised a hand, his voice calm but firm. "Not so fast. We have proof. And it's time everyone knows the truth." Darren straightened, his voice weak but steady. "Sasha, you took everything. My company, my name, my life. But you couldn't take my mother." Sasha's laugh was brittle, her eyes darting to the cameras. "You're delusional, both of you. This man is clearly unwell. Devon, tell them." Devon's jaw tightened, his gaze flickering to Darren. For a moment, guilt flashed in his eyes, but he said nothing, paralyzed by the weight of his betrayal. Esther's voice cut through the tension. "You can't silence us, Sasha. Not anymore." The crowd leaned in, the air electric with anticipation. Maria slipped through the guests, her phone now streaming the confrontation to Ao's contacts, ensuring the world saw Sasha's unraveling. Esther reached into her pocket, pulling out the psychiatric discharge summary and a stack of forged documents Ao had gathered, proof of Sasha's power of attorney fraud, the transferred shares, the payments to Devon. She handed them to the officiant, her hands steady despite the chaos. "Read these," she said, her voice unwavering. "They show how Sasha locked my son away, stole his fortune, and used his cousin to fool the world." The officiant hesitated, his eyes scanning the papers. Gasps rose as he read aloud. "Patient, Darren Madu, severe dissociative episode, power of attorney granted to Sasha Moretti." He trailed off, his face pale. Sasha lunged forward, her voice shrill. "Those are fake. She's lying to ruin me." But the crowd was turning, their murmurs growing hostile. A man in a suit, Darren's lawyer, alerted by Ao, stepped forward, his voice calm but authoritative. "I've seen these documents. They're real. And I'm filing charges as we speak." Sasha's eyes widened, her composure cracking. "Devon, do something," she snapped. Devon shook his head, stepping back. "I'm done, Sasha. It's over." The officiant raised his hands, his voice trembling. "This ceremony is halted. I cannot proceed under these circumstances." Chaos erupted, guests shouting, cameras flashing, security frozen in confusion. Esther held Darren close, shielding him from the storm. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "We're taking your life back." As the crowd dispersed, Devon stood alone at the altar, the weight of his actions crashing down. A journalist, live-streaming for a major outlet, thrust a microphone at him. "Who are you really?" she demanded, her camera trained on his face. Devon's voice shook, but he spoke, the truth spilling out. "I'm Devon Madu, Darren's cousin. Sasha paid me to be him. They locked Darren away, said he was too sick to lead. I never meant for it to go this far." The confession went viral, the video spreading across social media within minutes. Headlines exploded. Tech tycoon imposter scandal. Sasha Moretti's wedding deception. Guests uploaded their own footage, the internet ablaze with Esther's courage and Darren's return. Sasha tried to flee, but security, now under the lawyer's direction, detained her. "You can't do this," she screamed, her perfect facade shattered. "I made him. I built this empire." Darren faced her, his voice quiet but piercing. "You broke me, Sasha. But my mother put me back together." Esther's eyes met Sasha's, her gaze unyielding. "You underestimated a mother's love," she said. "That was your mistake." The journalist turned to Esther, her voice awed. "Mrs. Madu, how did you know? How did you save him?" Esther's tears fell, but her smile was fierce. "A mother always knows her child. And I'd walk through fire for mine." The crowd cheered, some in tears, as Darren hugged her, his strength returning. The vineyard, once a stage for deception, now bore witness to their triumph. Weeks later, a sleek conference room in Los Angeles buzzed with reporters, their cameras trained on Darren. He stood at a podium, healthier now, his suit tailored but his smile genuine. Beside him was Esther, her simple dress replaced with a vibrant blue one, her rosary beads tucked in her pocket. The banner behind them read, Esther's Light, a mental health foundation. Darren cleared his throat, his voice steady. 3 years ago, I lost myself to pressure, to ambition, to a system that didn't care. I was locked away, my identity stolen. But one person never gave up on me. He turned to Esther, his eyes shining. The man at the altar wasn't me, but the woman who saved me was always my mother. The room erupted in applause, Esther's tears falling as she squeezed his hand. A reporter stood, her question earnest. Mrs. Madu, what gave you the strength to fight for him? Esther's voice was soft but clear. Love. When you love someone, you don't stop. Not for gates, not for lies, not for fear. Darren's my heart, and I'd do it all again. Darren smiled, his arm around her. This foundation is for her, Esther's Light. To help others lost in the dark, to remind them someone's always fighting for them. As the press conference ended, Pastor Jim and Ao stood in the back, their smiles proud. Maria, now a friend, waved from the crowd. Esther looked at Darren, her boy returned, and felt peace. The world knew her son's truth, but more importantly, she knew his heart. I'm glad you made it to the end. I hope you enjoyed the story.